So today we are back in the garage and gonna look over the Chev Stang and see what kind of damage, if any, that was caused from the drag racing event that I just posted on my last video. And yeah, we took the day off today, kind of just chill out and just recap on all the stuff that happened at the drag racing event. And all I can say is this bitch was rolling. So yesterday before I left, we had a few little puddles of transmission fluid that kind of developed under the car, and I didn't really think nothing of it, but I proceeded just to go race yesterday, beat the shit out of it, and on the way home it started making a little bit of a clicking noise in third gear, like the transmission was making like a clicking or something, I don't know. And today I come out here after leaving it sit all night, and we have a lot of transmission fluid under the car. Have not even jacked the car up yet, but I'm thinking that when I did all my shift modifications in one of the last videos on this, I took out some accumulator springs and drilled the separator plate a little bit. When I put the pan back on, I just RTV'd it. I didn't use a gasket, and I'm thinking that RTV might have blown out with all the heat, with the transmission and everything like that. It might have blown out that RTV and started making it leak like this. And the only reason it'll leak when it's shut off is because once you shut the car off, the converter and all the excess fluid that sits in the torque converter can actually drain back into the pan and bring the fluid level up past the pan, and then it'll leak out of the pan gasket if the pan gasket's leaking. And then when you're running it, the fluid level is kind of just in the transmission moving around. It's not sitting in the pan as much, if that makes sense. Like I said, I have no idea. I didn't even jack this thing up yet. I just seen the fluid under the ground. And it's coming from the front of the transmission, which is kind of scary. I hope it's not a pump seal or anything like that. We're going to jack it up and find out what really went wrong. I got the car jacked up in the air here. And I'm just kind of going over stuff under the hood and making sure everything is, still there. And one of the main maintenance things I kind of look at on a turbo car is every time you go run it real hard or turn the boost up or anything like that, I always go in and I check the shaft play on the turbo. It's like seriously like checking the oil for me. Is I take the screen off of the turbo and I just wiggle the shaft a little bit, and this on 3, rock solid. I've never had anything other than rock solid out of these turbos, so I highly recommend them. I heard VS Racing is also really good. I've never personally ran VS Racing. I've always stuck with On 3, and they've never done me wrong. And like I said, it's kind of just like a basic maintenance thing that I do, is I just take the screen off or the air filter off of the end of the turbo, and I just check the shaft for excessive wear or a bunch of shaft play. Also, I think I'm going to mount a fan. I'm going to try to keep this radiator as long as I can because I'm trying not to spend a whole lot of money on this car, at least for the rest of the season here. So I just have this one single fan. This is off of like a Nissan, or a Toyota Corolla is what it's off of actually. This is the high-speed fan off of a Toyota Corolla. And I want to keep this fan and then mount another one on the front side of the radiator. I just have to, take my tranny cooler off down there and move it somewhere else so I can mount a fan on this side of the radiator and have one on the front side of the radiator. And then I'll have one work with the key, and then I'll have another one on a switch. So as soon as the car hits like 180 degrees or whatever, I'll hit the second fan on. And I want to see if that helps before I go out and buy a radiator, just because a radiator for this car is $300 on the cheap end, and I don't even fucking barely have that into my turbo. So not something I'm really interested in buying quite yet unless it's extreme necessity. I also took out the grill here on the way home to see if some added airflow into the radiator would help. And on the way home, if it was like 70 degrees outside, it would not overheat whatsoever. It would go to like 200 degrees and it would just sit there. Yet on the way there, it was around 75, 80 degrees, and it got up to 220 on the way up there. So I've been battling cooling issues with this thing pretty much ever since I put it together. I've kind of told you guys that, And I thought I fixed it, and then it came back, and then I thought I fixed it again, and it came back again. So yeah, at the track it was completely fine because I just leave the fan on in the staging lanes, and then by the time I got up to do a burnout, it was like 170 degrees. Did the burnout, and then by the time I was doing my pass, it was like 190. So it was perfect. I just kind of timed it right, and that all worked out. Now, as for this transmission leak that I got going on, I just jacked the car up, and I hope it's just the pan gasket or like maybe the dipstick tube or something like that. I kind of looked under here, and it's kind of like all wet in the passenger front corner. So it could be the pan, it could be the dipstick tube, it could be anything. But I'll show you guys what I'm working with here. So this is a fucking black pan, which is stupid, just because you can't tell where the leaks are. But you can kind of maybe see there's a lighter color here, and then it's darker here where it's all wet. And it looks like there's maybe a little break in the RTV right here, and then it also looks like up higher that this dipstick tube is leaking. And I'm hoping it's just the dipstick tube, honestly, because yeah, it really just seems like it's the dipstick tube, because how would fluid from the pan travel up? That doesn't make sense. It would have to come from a higher source if it was leaking, to get fluid up here. Usually if a pan gasket's leaking, it's just going to go and leak onto the pan, not go higher than the pan, usually. So, yeah, I'm going to rip that fucker out once and see. So I just yanked the transmission dipstick out of the car, and here it is. This is a locker or locar. I believe it's a locker or locar transmission dipstick. It's like a universal, flexible deal, so you can fit it in tight spaces like this Fox body here. And I honestly expected better, man, out of these guys. These O-rings on this dipstick that seal into the transmission are way too small. Unless they just like shrunk up for some reason, which I doubt it, because usually O-rings swell. They don't shrink. I don't know. I'm going to have to replace this with some new O-rings and see if that fixes the issue. One thing I kind of want to pump into everybody's head is money doesn't always buy you the solution. A lot of guys do this for a living, like they make transmission dipsticks, but you can't tell me you work hard at your job every day either. So this guy must have been wanting to get out on a Friday evening when he put these O-rings on. As you guys know, the Mustang has been running hot pretty much ever since I put it together. It wasn't as bad all motor. It would run 205 pretty much consistently all the time, 210 maybe. And now that I put the turbo on, it's been running hot, like 220. So, and it's only usually like if you drive it for an extended period of time, like longer than 20 minutes or something like that, it starts to creep up. And I think the radiator is just getting heat soaked. And we're going to try to alleviate that by adding another fan. I have this fan on the front, and I'm going to put this fan on the back side here. Or I should say this is kind of the front and this is the back, but whatever. So I'm going to have to take off my intercooler pipe here to kind of tilt the radiator forward, and then I'm going to have to relocate my transmission cooler somewhere else so I can mount the fan on the front here. I got the radiator back in. I just kind of tilted it forward so I could remove my tranny cooler and relocate it and put two fans on the front of the radiator. So as you can see here, I got two slim fans, one on each side here. These are both pushers, so they're blowing the air through the radiator. And then I got this little bit bigger fan as a puller. So this one's going to be pulling the air that these fans are pushing, and it all blows air through the radiator there. I relocated the trans cooler down there in front of the intercooler. Not the best spot, but I'm working with what I got right now. I took this thing out last night, and I just ran the two fans initially, the ones that are in the front of the radiator, and I drove it around for probably 35 minutes, and I was doing burnouts and just fucking trying to get the motor heated up, and them two in the front wouldn't let it get past 205 degrees. So that definitely was awesome. And then I flipped on the one in the front of the radiator there, or in the back of the radiator, the bigger single fan. I flipped that one on and it went down to like 185 degrees and it just sat there. So I'm thinking that these fans are definitely going to help my cooling issue just because I probably need an aluminum radiator or something like that. But if you add enough airflow through the radiator, you're going to be doing the same thing as the aluminum radiator would do. And this cost me like $5 versus an aluminum radiator for this car is like 300. So I'm trying to work with what I got for the rest of the season here. I think there's only like 2 more track days left, and we're trying to do this on a budget and whatnot. So this thing's all set, and maybe we're going to take this car out and try to be able to turn the boost up a little bit. I'd like to put this thing on like 15 to 18 pounds, anywhere in there, and that should be good for a 9-second pass. So we're going to be trying to tune it. It's kind of tough tuning it when you have that much horsepower, but maybe we'll throw the slicks on and get out trying to turn the boost up on this thing even more. So thanks for watching the video. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you later.